Good day everyone, especially to you Ma'am Jai. Today we will discuss about Corazon Aquino's life together with my groupmates. Personal background of Corazon Aquino. Corazon, or also known as Cory Aquino, Corazon Aquino was born on January 25, 1933 in Paniqui, Tarlac in the Philippines. Her birth name was Maria Corazon Sumulong Cuangco. Her parents owned a sugar plantation and were one of the richest families in the area. Her parents were Si Chichiyoko Coangco and Demetria Mitring Sumulong, and the family was of mixed Chinese, Filipino, and Spanish descent. The family surname is a Spanish version of the Chinese name Coco Cuango, or the sixth of 8 children. Aquino focused on her studies and her Catholic beliefs. Her parents sent her to private school in the Philippines before she went to high school and in the United States. She went to Ravenhill Academy in Philadelphia and then attended the Notre Dame Convent School in New York. When she graduated in 1949, she began her undergraduate education at the College of Mount St. Vincent in New York City. In addition to speaking English, Tagalog, and Kapampangan, Aquino majored in French. She returned to the Philippines to attend law school at Far Eastern University. While in school, she met fellow student Benigno or Ninoy Aquino Jr. and the couple got married. Soon after, Corazon left law school to raise their family. Corazon Aquino became a widow at age 50. Corazon Aquino, January 25 or 1933, August 1, 2009, was the first female president of the Philippines, serving from 1986 to 1992. She was the wife of Filipino opposition leader Benigno or Ninoy Aquino and began her political career in 1983 after dictator Ferdinand Marcos had her husband assassinated. Campaign strategies. In protest of Marcos' declared victory, she encouraged the people to boycott chronic-owned businesses and media, to delay their payment of utility bills, and to hold a strike the day after Marcos was scheduled to take his oath of office. Alongside Cory, the Catholic Bishops' Conference of the Philippines released a pastoral letter condemning the election as unparalleled in fraudulent conduct. Aquino was believed to be the winner. However, when the official count was released by the government, Marcos was declared the winner, believing she won the election but was cheated. Aquino and many citizens of the Philippines protested the decision. Although the protests were intense, Aquino and faith leaders encouraged peace agreements so no one was shot or killed. After weeks of political unrest on February 25, 1986, Aquino was sworn in as the first female president of the Philippines. She serves one term and restored the constitution during her presidency. However, not everyone agreed with her policies, and Marcos supporters tried to remove her from office many times. Aquino survived and was president until 1992. After her presidency, she continued to speak out against violence and homelessness in the Philippines. Election result. On February 20, 1986, Marcos proclaimed himself victor of the snap elections. Corazon Aquino planned a rally at Sunday which her supporters were expected to endorse her as the winner. The election was held on February 7, 1986. The official election canvasser, the Commission on Election or the COMELEC, declared that Marcos was the winner. The final tally of the COMELEC had Marcos winning with 10,807,197 votes against Aquino's, and Aquinos had vote 9,291,761 votes. On the other hand, based on returns of 70% of the present of the National Movement for Free Election or the NAMFREL, an accredited poll watcher had Aquino winning 7,835,070 votes against Marcos, and Marcos had 7,053,068 votes.
Priority legislation that turned into law. The first is the 1987 Philippine Constitution. State shall promote a just and dynamic social order that will ensure the prosperity and independence of the nation. It shall equally protect the life of the mother and unborn from conception. The state recognizes the vital role of the youth in nation building that shall promote and protect their physical, moral, spiritual, intellectual, and social well-being. The state that protect the advance and the right of the people to a balanced, healthful ecology in accord with the rhythm and harmony of nature. It shall protect the rights of workers and promote their welfare, and promote comprehensive rural development and agrarian reform. Subject to reasonable condition prescribed by law, the state adopts and implement a policy of full public disclosure of all its transactions involving public interest. So next is President Aquino issued Executive Order 227, or the New Family Code of the Philippines, which eliminated many of the discriminatory provisions of the Civil Code of the Philippines that had been based on the Spanish colonial law, that all marriages solemnized outside the Philippines in accordance with the law in force in the country where they were solemnized and valid there as such shall also be valid in this country. When a marriage between a Filipino citizen and a foreigner is validly celebrated, and a divorce is obtained validly abroad by the spouse, allowing him or her to remarry, the Filipino spouses have a capacity to remarry under Philippine law. Next is Administrative Code currently in force was first made in 1917, when the relationship between the people and the government was defined by colonial order at the time. Efforts to achieve an integrative and overall recodification of its provision resulted in the Administrative Code of 1978, which was never published and later expressly repealed. The effectiveness of the government will be enhanced by a new administrative code which incorporates in a uniform manner. Corazon Aquino's administration scandal. So first is the corruptions and missing funds at the Presidential Commission of Good Government. It is the most embarrassing recent scandal for Aquino have been allegations of corruptions and missing funds at the Presidential Commission on Good Government, which Aquino established to record public funds stolen during the Marcos administration. The allegations against the commissions were made public by Solicitor General Francisco Chavez, who was later forced to resign as a result of the allegations. The scandal have paralyzed the commission, which is supposed to be recovering Marcos' alleged $10 billion in hidden funds stashed overseas. After more than 2 years, its work is not widely regarded as a success. It has only recovered $160 million, mostly in asset, and none of it direct from Marcos himself, but rather from the cronies who cut deals with the commission. So next is a failure to implement comprehensive land reform. Aquino promised sweeping land reform early in her presidency, but her comprehensive agrarian reform program was eventually demolished by the House of Representatives, whose members, like Aquino, own large tracts of land. One of Aquino's administration's two strategic mistakes was the failure to implement comprehensive land reform, which would have increased rural incomes and reduced the appeal of communism in the countryside. The other was an inability to attract foreign investment in the midst of Asia's investment boom. So next is the corruption and cronyism. For instance, continue as time-honored tradition in the Philippines, and although there was less political wheeling and dealing in May's national elections, the old-style system of political patronage and favoritism remained in place. Next is the poverty. Meanwhile, poverty is still widespread, approximately half of the population. This represents an improvement over 1985 when nearly 60% of the population live below the official poverty line. Poverty and income inequality are among the highest in Asia. So next is the Cuanco had helped some of his cronies gain control of the lucrative cargo handling business. Aquino's wealthy and powerful congressman brother, Jose Pepin Cuanco Jr., has been frequent target of reports. Shortly after Aquino's election, newspapers reports claim that Cuanco assisted some of his cronies in gaining control of the high-paying cargo handling business. He is also suspected of using family ties to secure jobs for friends in Manila casinos. Cuanco has denied any wrongdoing, and no one in the Aquino family has been charged with a crime. Next is the most recent case involves Aquino's brother-in-law, Ricardo Baby Lupa, who reportedly took over the management of 36 companies formerly owned by Marcos Associate, former ambassador to Washington Benjamin Cocoy Romualdez, Imelda Marcos' brother. Lupa has asked the commission to allow him to formally repurchase the 36 firms because Romualdez seized them from the Lupa and Cuancos families in 1974. The companies have been sequestered or taken over by the commission. However, the inquiry board could not explain why its against did not take over the management of the 36 firms as in the normal practice. And lastly is the coup d'etat. No favors, no excuses. Corazon Aquinos declared after her People Power movement overthrew Ferdinand Marcos' corrupt regime. However, in the tumultuous 4 years since Aquino took office, allegations of incompetence and graft have increasingly tanned her own government. When rebellious soldiers launched the 7th failed coup against Aquinos on December 1. Their main grievances were the administration's failure to provide basic services and allegations of corruption among the president's wealthy and influential relatives. The allegations, exaggerated by the Manila Rumor Mill, have caused serious political damage. While the president is thought to be incorruptible, critics accuse her of turning a blind eye to family and friends who are allegedly enriching themselves at the expense of the public. In a December speech after the coup attempt, even Jemmy Cardinal, Sin Aquino's most important supporters, warned of a social explosion unless Aquino swiftly diffused and chasing reports of the abusive rules of presidential relatives.
Corazon Aquino Legacy. After President Corazon C. Aquino issued Proclamation No. 58 as 1987, the proclamation issued by President Aquino included the result of the plebiscite held on February 2, 1987. One of the important lessons has to do with unity. When people power happened, the Filipino people became united toward one goal, to overthrow a dictator and restore national democracy. Cory showed us that we are capable as a people to stand together and fight for our freedoms. We need to understand, however, that unity means setting aside our personal agenda for the sake of the common good. It means helping one another and even sacrificing ourselves for the welfare of our kababayan. While her husband Ninoy Aquino lived, she, as the unassuming but caring housewife, was the stabilizing influence that tempered his dynamic personality. But after the assassination of Senator Ninoy Aquino in August 1983, she stepped resolutely into his role as political leader of the country's democratic opposition to entrenched despotic regime.
Country's vital statistic. The total of population in 1987 is 57,415,175 to 1998 of the total 74,491,981. Marcos was removed from the office in 1986 through a peaceful people power revolution in which millions of people demonstrated in the street. Aquino's widow, Corazon, became president and a new constitution was approved in 1987. Meanwhile, the GDP growth rate increased steadily from 3.5% in 1986 to 4.3% in 1987, peaking in 1988 at 6.7%. The Aquino administration endured many troubles, including 6 coup d'etat attempts, many natural disasters, earthquakes, the Mount Pinatubo eruption, and a power shortage problem that caused economic activities to stop. The taxation system was reformed, and internal debt was brought to more manageable levels by debt restructuring and sensible fiscal management. By 1996, GNP was growing at the rate of 7.2% and GDP at 5.2%. The annual inflation rate had dropped to 5.9% from its high of 9.1% in 1995. By the late 1990s, the Philippines' economic growth gained favorable comparisons with other Asian countries such as Taiwan, Thailand, South Korea, and Malaysia. The Philippine economy took a sharp downturn during the Asian financial crisis of 1995. Its fiscal deficit in 1988 reached 49.981 billion pesos from surplus of 1.564 billion pesos in 1997. The peso depreciation fell in value to 40.86 pesos per US dollar from its previous rate of 29.47 pesos to a dollar. The annual growth rate of the GNP fell to 0.1% in 1998 from 5.3% in 1997. Despite these setbacks, the Philippine economy fared better than that of some of its Asian neighbors, and other nations praised the Ramos administration for its good housekeeping.